Hello, people of the tubes. Pooh Mouse is not dead. I'm sorry that I didn't update the Greenlight page regularly. In fact, I haven't updated it in several months. But don't worry, I've been working on the game tirelessly. Or at least regularly. In the last page that I made on Greenlight, I wanted to release the game in the last year, at the end of the last year. But not only did we get delayed, we also decided to add more features to the game. Originally, we just wanted to have a simple single-player demo of the game for early access. It would have had the first area, the Hawk boss fight, and just a bunch of enemies. Probably one or two more boss fights that are also in the area. And you could talk to NPCs and explore the very small area, and that would have been the demo. But what we decided to go for was a far larger concept. We decided to attempt to add multiplayer to the game, and so I want there to be the possibility to have little multiplayer matches in this game. So the single player is pretty much as I had it in mind, but then it feeds into the multiplayer mode in such a way that you can go to these arenas and then you can go be matched with other players and you could fight them to the death, or you could race against them for time, or you could whatever. There might even be a soccer mode in there, who knows. Just any kind of amazing multiplayer experience that we could think up. And these would be simple yet highly addictive modes that you could play over and over again, and in doing so, in adding these modes, we will increase the replay value of the game greatly. It will not be just a single throwaway indie game that you play once and then you're done with it. It would be a game where you constantly try to get better at it, and you beat your friends and you play with your friends, maybe you even cooperate with them. And that is my grand vision for Poor Mouse. But unfortunately, I'm not sure if I'll be able to achieve all of that. I'm definitely going to try, and I definitely want to have multiplayer features in by the time we release on early access, whenever that may be. Sorry for the delay, but I think quality is more important than just making the things fast. So it was probably a bad idea for me to tell you about this, to set this deadline for me, even though it probably helped, in fact. Having this deadline probably made me work on it harder than it would have not having the deadline and just being in obscurity. But then, of course, not meeting the deadline is probably a problem. Maybe. Well, I hope you don't mind too much that this deadline has not been met. But don't worry, the game will be great and it will definitely come out if I don't die, which I probably won't. I am fairly young.
I want to avoid any situations where people will get pissed off because of delays or because they had inflated expectations of the game. It's a very small team of 3 developers that will be doing this entire game, and therefore it will be very indie. Any promotional material that we're going to release at this point is going to be very much subject to change. I have a grand vision about how the game is going to play out and behave, but compromises will have to be made because there's many things that aren't as easy as you would think to make, and we want to bring out the game before I run out of money, obviously, so that's going to be taken into consideration. So when the game is purchasable, that's when you can see what features there'll be in the game. So far, we don't know what will make it in the final game. So keep that in mind when you get hyped. Get hyped! it's very hard to actually say how long anything's going to take in game development, because it's very fluid. Sometimes you get a whole lot done in a week, and sometimes you just get stuck for a whole week and don't get anything done. Maybe not even fix that thing that got you stuck in the whole week. So that's probably why it's better not to set any more deadlines for now.
So additional challenges in making this multiplayer mode, other than the inherent difficulty of connecting to two games or even more, so that they are well synchronized and can't be tampered with by cheaters, is the fact that you need to release a multiplayer game in an amazing, polished mode that allows players to get fully addicted. Because if players stop playing, then it will enter a so-called multiplayer death cycle, where the players that do want to play are incapable of finding a match because the other players are not playing at the same time because they have lost interest. So this means that if we indeed have a successful multiplayer mode, we will need to have a game that is very polished and very intuitive and addictive. We've had successful multiplayer tests, but they've only been baby steps. It's been stuff like testing if you can shoot seeds at each other and then reflecting the seeds, but there's no big deal with beating each other. We haven't had any tests where we fought our friends or anything yet. It was just me and Nestor throwing seeds at each other. You can check that video out, by the way, if you want. It's on my channel somewhere. So I still have a lot of work to do in making the rules that make up the multiplayer architecture. That's more, yeah. I have to create all kinds of game modes, and I'll probably create some game modes that won't be fun, and then I'll have to redo them or make different ones. And hopefully, if the multiplayer experiment is successful whenever we release, then we'll ask what kind of multiplayer modes the players want to play and which ones are less interesting for them. Yes, hopefully all of these things will be possible once the game gets early access and once we have an actual player base, if we ever do get such a thing. Some games go completely under the radar when they're released, and then no one will play them, and they'll definitely not have a multiplayer mode that is populated. But hopefully we'll have it at least so that if you have 4 friends, you could play with them and fight them. We'll see, but hopefully it'll be so that there'll always be full servers, and you'll be able to join the bandits mode, and you'll be able to kill other players for seeds, and then get a high bounty of seeds and just be amazing. And there'll always be more players for you to fight against, because there's always going to be players playing. But that's a dream. It would be great if that could come true in this way, if we could really have engaging multiplayer modes. Alternatively, I've heard that people say that multiplayer modes are not very important, and that certain games will be better off if they hadn't tacked on a silly multiplayer mode, and if they had just stuck with single player and focused on that fully, it would have been better. Yes, certain game critics definitely think that some multiplayer modes have been pointless and bad. But for me, I don't support this view in any way. Sure, I've played single player games and I've loved them, but the games I keep coming back to, those are the multiplayer games. I've got thousands of hours of Team Fortress or League of Legends. Sure, I've played Skyrim twice, but I was just talking to NPCs and crafting armor. There's nothing to write home about. I want to interact with players, not NPCs. But of course, single player games have their place and their time, even if their time is not as long as a multiplayer game. But of course, there's also bad multiplayer games that don't take off, and then no one plays them, and releasing a multiplayer game is always a risk in that way, because you're reliant on your players far more than a single player game. But luckily, we'll have both, so maybe it'll work perfectly. And maybe it turns out that no one wants the multiplayer mode and it was all a big waste of time, and we'll only have 1 or 2 good multiplayer modes that you can play with your friends if you must, but we're not going to develop any more if there's no demand for them. It's possible, but I want to have multiplayer in early access. It'll be an experiment. It won't be... Well, I mean, it will be good, but there'll be 2 different modes, probably, I think. Don't think we'll do any more than that, because we don't want to divide the player base any more than that. Just having 2 different modes will be interesting, because I want to have at least the fighting one, and then the other one could be a race or a boss battle or whatever. There's different choices. But it would be good if there would be 2, and then we could see if players like them. And then if they do like them, we can make more. That would be good. And that is what I'm aiming for. So stay tuned for more Poor Mouse development. You can subscribe to this channel. I'm not posting on Greenlight a lot apparently, so this channel is where the announcements happen. And then I also have another channel under my name, Florian Himsl, where you can watch me program, and it's long and boring, and you probably don't want to do that. But if you really like to see behind the scenes footage of me programming, then that's where you can find that. But the main Game Squid channel, that's where you can get all the announcements whenever I'm not posting silly memes on there as well. Yes. Goodbye.